As I often do, let me try to ground this discussion first. I'll start with this. It is sobering. Check this out. It's not good, but I think it will ground the discussion, the topic of this TNP Bunker video. It says signs and symptoms typically start between 2 days and 3 weeks after contracting the virus, with a fever, sore throat, muscular pain, and headaches. Vomiting, diarrhea, and rash usually follow, along with decreased function of the liver and kidneys. The same could be said about me eating my wife's cooking, by the way. I'll just throw that in there. Back to being serious. At this time, some people begin to bleed both internally and externally. Again, back to my wife's cooking. Sorry. The disease has a high risk of death, killing between 25% and 90% of those infected, with an average of about 50% mortality. Wow, that is a lot. This is often due to low blood pressure from fluid loss, typically follows 6 to 16 days after symptoms appear. It says the virus spreads through direct contact with bodily fluids, such as blood from infected humans or other animals. Spread may also occur from contact with items recently contaminated with bodily fluids. Spread of the disease through the air between primates, including humans, has not been documented in either laboratory or natural conditions. Semen or breast milk of a person after recovery from this virus may carry the virus for several weeks to months. Fruit bats are believed to be the normal carrier in nature, able to spread the virus without being affected by it. Am I talking about COVID-19 coronavirus? No, I'm not. I'm not talking about that virus. I'm talking about the Ebola virus, or EHF, or EVD, Ebola virus disease, which was very prominent in the news in 2014. So why do I start this video on how to prepare for the coming pandemic with this and not talking about the coronavirus, which I will do? To ground the discussion. That's why. To ground the discussion. Because the Ebola virus had a mortality rate, as I just read, it's everywhere online, around 50%, sometimes, like this says, up to 90%. What's the mortality rate for corona? That's right, about 2%. 2%. The mortality rate for normal flu is about 1%, according to my research, which of course is flawed. But it will get me close. It will get me in the ballpark. So we have a 2% chance with COVID-19, with this pandemic of dying. And by the way, that is applicable to only certain individuals with certain risk factors, reduced immunity, older, maybe they have some existing precondition that allows them to be more susceptible to COVID. Who knows? I'm not, the expert on all this, but we want to ground it as we launch into preparing for the coming pandemic. And yes, I do have some very serious things to say about it. I do think this is a precursor probably for other things that we may face in the future. That will be the theme to this bunker video here in TNP. But we want to ground it in reality of what is really the threat. As a reminder, we faced the West Nile virus in 1999. It had a 10% mortality rate, which is substantial. That's a lot of people. So if you got West Nile, look it up, research it, open up another Google window. It was about a 10% mortality rate. Okay, SARS, by the way, COVID is related to SARS. It's an offshoot of SARS, according, again, to my imperfect research. Had about a 9.5%, we'll round up, 10% mortality. And that was circulating in the U.S., around the world in the 2002-2003 timeframe, SARS. And then it resurged again, SARS did, in 2012, and it leapt up to approximately a 34% mortality rate. That to me is much more alarming than what we're facing now. H1N1 in 2009 claimed 100,000 lives. H1N1. It was an influenza epidemic of sorts. It was contained, as was most of this stuff. Contained, obviously. Otherwise, someone would have been infected by it, maybe yourself. Swine flu in 2009. Serious. Remember hearing about all the swine flu? Again, grounding it. Common flu can claim up to, I've heard estimates from 40,000 to 60,000 people a year. Common flu, something we've dealt with forever, and we have vaccines for forever, but it can claim up to 60,000 deaths a year. I heard a statistic that 2017 it was up to 60,000. I don't know if that's right, but let's just say it's half of that, 30,000. That's a lot. Now, with coronavirus, I'm not going to throw out numbers here because it is a rapidly developing situation. The numbers are changing. What's happening in China? Are they covering up the real numbers, the real amount of people who have been infected seriously and perhaps even died from this? Probably. So I don't know if we're getting legitimate information. Even if we were, I'm not going to put it in video form because it's so rapidly changing. But I don't think it's up to those numbers yet. Not even close. Thousands, yes. Hundreds of thousands, from what I've read and from what I know about, my information sources, absolutely not. So we're grounding it in that, is this an actual pandemic that will shut us down as a country, that could cost you your life, that could affect you? The direct answer from what I know, again, about the virus itself is no. Even if you contracted it, if you're healthy, you're probably going to get better, just like any flu. They're probably going to develop a vaccine for this. Yes, as of yet, there is none, but they're probably going to find out a vaccine, as they have done with other flus, and inoculate the populace against it. There are containment measures in place already in the United States and other countries. I perceive myself that they're not messing around, that all countries are taking this very serious. They're quarantining people. They're not letting it spread rampantly. But so the virus itself, is it going to affect you and give you projectile diarrhea, much like your wife's cooking? Probably not. But in this video, we're going to expand that. We're not just talking about Corona, COVID-19. We're talking about other things that could and probably, I hate to say will because it's really hard to predict. I'll kind of go there. I'll say that, no, I'll just say could. Let me just stick with could. That could happen in the United States. And that's where the real focus of this video is, partially. So I'm going to talk about actuality, which I'm discussing right now, of coronavirus, COVID-19. Perceptions, that's very important. Fallout, that's just my term of what's going to happen, perhaps. Preparations that you should consider, much of which I've discussed here in the project over a span of time. And then where do we go from here? So I think the actuality of the virus has been covered right now in my introduction. Is it serious? Are people getting sick and dying from it? Yes. But the honest truth is people get sick and die from a lot of things, from a lot of sicknesses that are much more serious, much more aggressive than this. And I just listed a bunch of them for you. So what's the deal? Why do we hear about coronavirus? And this will take us into perceptions. The reason you're hearing about coronavirus, in my opinion, and that's all it is, this is an opinion piece, but it's based in good logic, I think in common sense, and in my own moral structure. The reason you're hearing so much about it on the news and so much panic and I don't know, just fear about it, is because that's what the media wants you to do. They are peddling fear because they want to get rid of President Trump. They couldn't do it with the Russian hoax, and so what they're doing is trying to tag this and the lack of response, a Bush-like Katrina response is what I've been hearing the last week, about how he is ill-equipped, he's foolish, he's dumb, he's going to put the entire country at risk. Here he goes again, he's out of control, he must be removed from office. We need to bring in socialism right now. There is the bottom line according to how I see it. This is nothing more than fear-mongering from the liberal socialist media with their agenda to usher in socialism to this country. Now, you may differ in that characterization. Well, it's not socialism. Maybe a Democrat, nothing. Well, the whole Democratic Party, if you were to ask me, and I think a lot of people, I'm talking millions upon millions of people, know at this point that the Democratic Party is socialist, something that I've said in the project way back, and I caught heat for it, and I say I'd call them communists. I'd go the next step. I called, Barack Obama communist. Was he actually a communist? No, but it was hyperbole to make a point that this is where we're going. We're going towards absolute government control, absolute people control, and the destruction of the U.S. Constitution along the way, the outline of all private firearms ownership, huge taxes, wealth redistribution, all the stuff that goes along with it, and then the collapse, in my opinion, of the U.S. economy, at least as we know it today. So when you hear story after story, fear-mongering about coronavirus, this, in my opinion, is what it's about. To get rid of Trump. And I think the Democrats are very much embracing the coronavirus. It's fallout, and they want to see a complete, I wouldn't say complete, but a substantial economic slowdown, economic downturn. They would welcome a recession. And I bet a lot of them would actually welcome a depression, because then again, they would pin it all on President Trump, even though he had nothing to do with it. But a lot of people would think he did. And lo and behold, guess who would get elected? A Democrat. So don't think that Trump is just going to automatically win re-election. There's months to go. And there's a lot of things like this that can happen that changes people's perceptions. Unfortunately, I would hope that the American populace would be very critical thinking and to understand that this is ridiculous, and that the federal response, as I know it as of yet, has been more than adequate. And it's not even an American problem. It originated in China, and that's where it came from. And it really doesn't, at this time when I'm filming this video, I think there's a couple cases in the United States, if that. And it's hilarious in a bad way that they're trying to make it an American problem, because it is propaganda. Now, along with that, and here's the very interesting part of how this could become a pandemic of sorts. I talked about the virus, and I talked about how it really isn't that threatening to you as a healthy individual. You're probably not going to die from it. Will you get sick? Yes. It's like pneumonia. You're going to get sick. Will you survive it? Probably. There have been Americans on cruise ships that have been quarantined. They're not in this country, as I understand. I think, or if they are, they're at Travis Air Force Base being quarantined. I don't know where they are in the pipeline. But some of them, I believe, are already showing signs of healing, just like a lot of people do with a normal flu. Okay? That's that. But the perception is the dangerous part of this. And this is what I'm talking about under this banner of perceptions. The Democrats, and I don't apologize for that, I'm going to stick by it. You're going to see a lot of comments below this video that will support me in that. Welcome this fear. They welcome this hysteria over everything. Whatever it is, it's just Corona now. This is the flavor of the month. But they want to do anything to create tumult in the country, destroy unity between people, in Americans, and again, try to twist it and pin it on a very dangerous president to them, because he does not subscribe to their socialist ideology. In fact, he's quite the opposite. He's a capitalist. He believes in wealth creation for all races, all economic stratus, and they don't like that. It threatens their power structure. And so whatever works, whatever they can throw against the wall and stick and get rid of Trump, that's what they're doing. Okay, I'm sorry I'm going off on this, okay? What I meant to go to right now is that what it results in some people's minds is that this is the end of the world. This is a pandemic that everyone's talked about, and here it is. Well, let's go back a second. Isn't that what they said about Ebola? Isn't that what they said about SARS? Isn't that what they said about swine flu? Isn't that what they said about mad cow disease? Forgot to throw that one in. Isn't that what they said about any number of sicknesses, or actually economic downturns? It's the end of the world. We're done. Remember all the doom and gloom we heard around the 2008 timeframe. They want that, but when people in mass numbers start believing this stuff, bad things can happen. You've seen it already. The stock market has been affected by this, and it could take a big downturn. If investors in our economy lose confidence for whatever reason, you could see a big economic downturn, which it could again go into recession, could go into worse, depression. Could that happen from this, from a flu? Yes, because we live in a different age where truth is not the standard. It's actually distruth is the standard. Non-news propaganda. And many people have a hard time understanding that or accepting it. That they don't believe it. They believe if they turn on a major news channel and they say, hey, coronavirus is going to end the world, we're going to go into depression, guess what? They are going to lose confidence in the economy. Maybe they don't start buying stuff. Maybe they change their behavior. And it's their perception. And that could lead to some bad things. Says me. It's just my opinion. What I think would happen if this got really bad, let's say somehow, and this could happen, that it does come to the United States, and maybe we do have thousands of cases. From this point in the video on, I'm going to kind of assume that, because it kind of plays to my other points I want to make, and maybe what could happen. With today's disinformation and this fear-mongering that takes place through these media sources, what could happen is people do this. They just freeze. And they just freeze in place. They don't go on vacation. They may not go out of their house. They don't want to go buy stuff. They don't want to interact with people. Retail sales completely tank. Travel, both on cruise ships. By the way, I think that's already completely tanked because of what has happened. On aircraft, ceases. Now we're progressing into a really scary part of this, and that is where it affects our economy. So it's all based on perception, not that there's the Black Plague breaking out and killing hundreds of thousands, millions of people. No, it's not that. It's purely perception. And if you can convince enough people and strike fear in their hearts, that's the battle. That's the battle. Durable goods, and I'm going to come back to this, may become scarce. They may be snatched off the shelves. They may not be produced because workforces may not be allowed to go to work and be in a group situation. And that, my TNPers, could result in a national crisis. Perhaps an international crisis. Again, not necessarily based in physiological facts, realities, but in perception and people's fear. That could happen once again. Now, I take you to a website currently being maintained by the CDC. I'll have a link below. I think it is well done. It is succinct. It updates what they know about it. How it's being fought, known cases, and a couple other things. You can read it if you want. I will read just a portion from it. It is from the CDC. Now, as a mini rant, I have just a slight issue with the CDC when they come over to gun control. And they have done this in past years. They pretend that gun control is in their purview. It's in their mission statement. That is a health risk. And so they want to overturn gun ownership in the United States of America or affect it somehow negatively. So you cannot have guns, especially black rifles, semi-autos, whatever. This goes back a long ways, by the way. CDC has done some bad stuff. However, to be fair, to be mature, to be an adult, which I always advocate, I think when they stay in their lane and they talk about diseases, fighting diseases and what they're doing with COVID-19, I think they do good work. That's their mission statement. They're good at it. And I think the page and what they're saying about it is factual. I don't think it's hyped. I don't think it's politically motivated. I think it's just telling you the world, hey, this is where we're at with it. This is what they say. Again, the link's below if you care. It says, at this time, the virus is not currently spreading in the community in the United States. However, this situation is rapidly evolving. The individual risk is dependent on exposure. I'm jumping around a little bit so I don't bore you guys. For the general American public who are unlikely to be exposed to the virus at this time, the immediate health risk from COVID-19 is considered low. Again, this information may change, but as of today, which will be near the time I post this video, that's what they're saying. Under certain circumstances, certain people will have an increased risk of infection. For example, healthcare workers caring for patients with COVID-19 or other close contacts of persons with COVID-19. CDC has developed guidance to help the risk assessment and management of people with potential exposure to the flu or corona. I like this. What may happen? And this will go back to perception, what we're talking about now. More cases are likely to be identified in the coming days, including more cases in the United States. It's also likely that person-to-person spread will continue to occur, including the U.S. Widespread transmission of COVID-19 in the United States could translate into large numbers of people needing medical care at the same time. Schools, child care centers, workplaces, and other places for mass gatherings may experience more absenteeism. Okay, and this will go to my next talking point, fallout. What's going to happen from all this? Public and healthcare systems may become overloaded with elevated rates of hospitalization and deaths. Other critical infrastructures, such as law enforcement, emergency medical services, and transportation industry may be affected. Healthcare providers and hospitals may be overwhelmed. At this time, there is no vaccine to protect against COVID-19 and no medications approved to treat it. But guess who's creating such vaccines? The pharmaceutical companies, which the leftists absolutely hate. They detest them. And lo and behold, they will be the ones, what do you know, capitalism coming to the rescue to solve this. It won't be any government entity. It will be capitalism. Hey, we're going to make a vaccine. Maybe we can make a few bucks off of it. Problems have been solved. Okay, that's what the CDC predicts under their caption, what may happen on their webpage. To be honest, to me, it smacks a little bit of, again, fear-mongering if we take into account physiological realities, statistical realities of COVID-19. As a reminder, 2% mortality rate. 2%. Not 10% like we talked about with some of the other diseases, not 50%, 2%, slightly higher than the normal flu. And they're predicting the end of the world. Kind of. Well, they did say that emergency services would be tasked. I'm sorry, I disagree with that. I just think that is ridiculous. In terms of responding to actual COVID-19 cases, emergencies where people's lives are at risk, from what we know now, and again, it could change, and this video could be dated, and I stand by that, but how? We don't see that with normal flu. And we've had some really bad flu years, right? I think 2017 was horrendous. And that is statistically proven. But society went on. Hospitals continued to function. They served other patients. Police services continued to function. Food was on the shelves. Life did not cease. So under their caption, what may happen, maybe I could say there might be a little bit of a political agenda there. I hope not, but it seems a little bit far-fetched for COVID-19. Now, I'll come back to that point. For COVID, we could see something else where it is absolutely possible what they're predicting. And that is an underwriting theme, again, of this video. But we're focusing just for now on Corona. They do bring up some other points, though, that really aren't related to, again, the physiological facts of COVID. And one of them, and we're going to morph over into fallout. We just got done talking about perceptions. The fallout, what's going to happen societally as people perceive this. And they mention it right here, absenteeism. So people, if they perceive they're going to catch this deadly disease, they don't go to work. Factory workers may be kept from factories and things don't get made. That, by the way, is already going on in China. So a fallout from COVID-19, perception-wise, is that employees, employers could stop producing. or they could drastically limit what they're producing. And that, my friends, is a definite reality, a definite possibility of what could happen. And you could see shortages of durable goods, of medicines, actually. I heard that most of our antibiotics are produced in China. So what's going to happen with that? I'll say nothing good. I have this chart, and it's talking about technology devices and what they're predicting for first quarter 2020 just from the corona effect in the economy, mostly in the Orient. So China primarily, and maybe Thailand, maybe some other places too. But they're saying smartwatches will be down 16%, smartphones 10%, notebooks down 12%, monitors 5%, TVs 5% will be less available. And that may not sound like a lot, but you'd be surprised. There's going to be some stores that are going to experience some shortages, they're saying. Smart speakers, automobiles will be down by 8%. Again, these are just estimates. There are some predictions that iPhones won't be available, or they will be highly curtailed in their availability because they're just not being produced. It's a high labor item to produce. It takes a large workforce to produce it, and they're in close proximity. And what do you know? Those factories over in China aren't producing iPhones right now. They're not producing a lot of things, kind of like these light bulbs right here. Oh, what do you know? Coming out of my storage. Let's look on the box. Where are these made? China. So your light bulbs aren't made in the United States. They're made in China. Durable goods that you need, that you depend upon, that are replaceable, may become hard to get. Hard to get. So if we talk about fallout, we could see shortages. We could see shelves go bare as two factors come into play. One, there may be some panic buying. That, again, perception may be, oh my gosh, the world is ending. This coronavirus is like the Black Plague. I'm going to freaking die. I'm going to buy everything up. I hear that in Hawaii, some of that has happened already. Not a lot, but in certain things like, emergency supplies, that could happen. The other part of that is these items just aren't being produced at the same level. And if they are, maybe they're not imported. So there's a lot of repercussions, a lot of economic impact from corona that could be very disastrous to the U.S. economy. And it could put us in a tailspin. I think we're a lot more delicate in this economy than anyone, well, I shouldn't say anyone, but a lot of people let on. I feel like we're at the end of a whip. Everything has to be working just right. We need rail transportation. We need ship transportation. We need air transportation. We need people feeling good about the economy, spending their money, investing in the economy, saving. We need people traveling, visiting, going on tourist vacations. All of these things intermesh to produce a U.S. economy, and actually the world economy. If any one of those fingers, I shall call them, is affected, then it can have repercussions throughout all the economy. We're seeing that right now. Again, the stock market is going up and down, more down than up, as these factors come into play. Again, perception. It's not related to thousands upon thousands of people dying from corona. It's related to perceptions. And to be honest about, precautions people are taking, countries are taking to prevent its spread, which is reasonable. For instance, if you work in a factory in close proximity to other workers, does it make sense not to be next to that individual? Yes, it does. So the employees in these countries, specifically China, a lot of them aren't even coming to work. They're not allowed to. They're told to stay at home because they work in a factory in close proximity to thousands of other people. And they're trying to prevent the spread. From what we know, from what China has told us. But that means that iPhones will become scarce. A lot of electronic goods will become scarce. In fact, I would say probably most of them because they're made in China. Shoes, clothing, light bulbs, knives, all these things could become scarce because the workforce is shut down. And then you have international confidence. If it's shaken and everything coming from China whether it's based in fact, reality, or not, it could affect the exportation of these goods if and when they are available. Other countries may say, hey, that's cool, you got a whole crate of iPhones, but we're really not sure about this coronavirus thing. Again, it's from what I know, the virus cannot live on an inanimate object more than 7 days. So you can have a pallet of iPhones come in a week later. You're at no risk to getting to COVID-19. But again, perceptions, what people believe, what governments believe, that is what's going to create all the problems, not the actual, again, coronavirus itself. What people think, what they believe will create the bad fallout and is creating the bad fallout of COVID-19. And it may go on and on. Who knows? I think tourism has tanked. Not just going in and out of China, if there is any at all, but I think around the world as fear sets in and people are afraid of musical chairs. Oh, and by the way, I would kind of be that way too. I don't know if I would travel anywhere out of country, out of the United States right now, for fear of getting COVID-19 and being frozen in place. So let's say you had this vacation planned to France. You go to France, they find some COVID-19 cases within the city of Paris. You're in Paris, and you may get caught up in this whirlwind of quarantine. Oh, wait, you're a foreigner. We're going to just quarantine you. We got to lock this down. And it's their government. It's the French government. It's every government. They may have their own procedures of how they're going to handle this. They may declare martial law while you're over there. Now what are you going to do? That's part of the fallout. This quarantine thing that's going on, just ask the people who went on cruises and had no idea that their lives were going to be severely affected, whether they had the virus or not. Like, hey man, you're frozen in place for months and you ain't going back to the U.S. Absenteeism, huge. Teachers won't go to school. Transportation workers won't go to their jobs. People will call in sick to avoid getting sick, really sick. And this, again, could send our economy into a tailspin. And that is much more dangerous, I think, than the actual virus itself. Drug shortages could ensue, and that could affect a lot of people. If there are drug shortages, again, more than COVID-19 would. But let's say they can't get their needed drug for whatever they need. Let's say hypertension drug, but they can't get it. It's in short supply. And now the cost goes through the roof. They can't afford it. Now you have people dying because they are being severely affected because they can't get their drugs. That, to me, is a lot more scary than the virus. The economic impact of this supposed pandemic. And again, it's kind of like a ping pong ball in a gymnasium filled with mouse traps. Once one sets off, boom, 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 it goes, chain reaction on the fallout. I hope the markets don't crash from this, but I think this is new territory. And again, we're not in a truthful age with the media where they could calm people down. They could settle people down, restore their confidence in the economy. It's quite the opposite once again. They have a political agenda. They have some propaganda they want to drive. They want to change this country politically for the worst to a socialist economy. And this is an opportunity for them. And if they have to do it on the backs of Americans, so be it. They don't care. That's my opinion. They don't care. And if it means people get hurt in the process, they will say, and I say they, I'm saying collectively and generally speaking, the leftists, they would say it serves the greatest good. That's truly what they believe. And if we have to take capitalism down through COVID-19, then so be it. Could happen. Fallout could be serious. Now, before I go into preparations, what you could do to maybe help your situation out. I have been talking about COVID-19. I think what the benefit of what we're going through right now isn't so much COVID-19, and I say benefit, but I should say the educational process, that's a better term for it, isn't about the economic fallout. I think it is a wake-up call to you personally, because I feel very confident in saying that if it's not COVID-19, it's going to be something much more serious in the years to come that will rapidly spread, that will have a much higher mortality rate, kind of like that Ebola. And then all the stuff we're talking about will play, and it would be warranted. And I think if anything good comes out of what we're going through right now, it should wake you up to your preparations. Are you ready? And what you need to be ready for, TNPer, is to live 90 days in your domicile without ever leaving your house, without ever leaving your apartment. Can you do that? Because let's say, and again, I'm not talking about corona right now. I'm talking about something that is highly contagious and highly lethal, that is spread through casual contact, maybe through the air. And it does spread much like that movie, which I thought was actually pretty good, 2011, Contagion. That it went from bats to the bananas to the pigs to the restaurant, and people were dying like crazy, and it completely changed society. That's a good movie. And by the way, it seems like all these diseases come from freaking bats. COVID does. COVID is, the host is a bat. So Contagion kind of nailed that. But let's say you have a Contagion type situation. Watch the movie. Are you ready to sequester yourself and your loved ones, your family, your friends in your domicile? And I'm just picking 90 days because I think that's reasonable. That way you're not exposed to people. You're not face to face. They're not sneezing on you. They're not breathing on you. You're not touching their germs on the shopping carts. Are you ready? You should be. If you've been watching and subscribing to my channel, you should be. Now, this is a gear adventure channel. I'm not a prepper channel. I don't think I'm a survivalist channel either. I'm a common sense channel, and I review gear items. But along the way, I will do an occasional without rule of law video to help you, to have you think about how delicate society is. It's one of my tenets. I've been this way ever since I was a little kid. I know society is just very delicate. It could crash at any time. I've always had thoughts of without rule of law ever since I was a kid. Are you ready to do this for 90 days? I bet you ain't. And if you ain't, I'm sorry, shame on you. You should have, number one, enough food for at least 90 days in your place of residence. I know I haven't done a specific video on that yet, but here's the shortcut. Freeze-dried. Get freeze-dried food. It stores for 25 years. It's lightweight. It's compact. You can store it in buckets. You should have enough for 90 days for everybody who lives in your apartment, in your domicile, and then some more because you may have some visitors. Freeze-dried. Get some freeze-dried food. Will it allow you to survive? Yes. Is it delicious and allow you to continue your food lifestyle? No. But if it were to get to a contagion level, you want to be independent. You don't want to be a problem of the state. And by that I mean, if you don't have enough food, enough supplies for you to be independent from the government, you're part of the problem. You're like everybody else. So here you've been watching these preparation videos all these years and you haven't done anything to prepare. You're part of the problem. You don't want to be part of the problem. You want to maintain your independence by having your shit together. Am I ready? Heck yeah. More than 90 days. A year? No, I don't have enough water for a year. I'd have to find a source water. But 4 months, maybe 5 months, yeah, could go that long. So that takes us to water, of course. I did make a video about that called Many Shall Die of Thirst. You should have a water supply on your property. What if the water supply is infected with this contagion? Again, I'm not talking about corona at this time. I'm talking about something much more severe that probably will come to our country. Are you ready to have a clean, pure water supply? I have talked to TNPers. They say, well, I don't really have water at my property, but I have a creek that flows by it. I know I can purify it. Yeah, but what if it has some really funky stuff in it? Like bad sicknesses. Would you trust that your purification method will absolutely protect you? I would always say have a self-contained, ready-to-go water supply on your property as much as you can possibly store. You can get 10-gallon barrels, 15-gallon barrels, 30-gallon barrels. Get those big old water buffaloes. I have one of those. It holds like 200 gallons. Change it like every couple years. Is it the freshest, best tasting water ever? No, but you can survive on it and you won't die from drinking it. And you can purify that. Have water as much as you can store. Have food. How about fuel? When I was in Spokane, and I've said this before in some other prep videos I did, we had an ice storm up there and all the power lines are above ground. They ran through these huge, to this day they do, run through these huge tall pine trees. But The ice storm started out as rain, and then rain turned to sleet, and this sleet froze on these tree limbs, and it weighted them down with thousands of pounds of ice, which came crashing down, I'm talking about the trees themselves, onto the power lines and broke it in hundreds and hundreds of places. So essentially, all the town of Spokane was without power, part of Coeur d'Alene, and it was severe. I mean, people were without power for like a month. They were doing the best they could trying to restore power, but it showed how delicate that power grid is just from a natural factor. Do you have fuel? That was one of my early wake-up calls. I had some fuel. I had propane tanks, couple stored up. I had fuel cartridges stored up. I did have some kerosene, but I realized going through that, I didn't have enough. And I totally realized that my neighbors didn't have anything. I mean, I was freaked out about how little my neighbors had, and I was actually cooking for my neighbors. I was like helping them. Again, rebuilding community is huge to me in this without rule of law thing. And I was cooking for them, and I had my propane up. Since then, I have more propane, I have more gas cylinders, I have butane, and I have kerosene. You should do the same. Fuel. Are you ready for fuel? How about essentials? And this is a broad topic, but I just want to mention it. I showed you one right here. Granted, maybe the electrical grid is down, maybe it isn't, don't know, but do you have light bulbs saved up? Do you have toiletries saved up? Lotion, soap, shampoo, Kleenex, disinfectant wipes, antibacterial gel, Band-Aids, basic first aid stuff, all that should be saved up. What if there's a shortage of medical supplies from this China thing and you can't buy bandages? You don't know. And again, it could be something else. How about batteries? I've always stored up batteries. I date them all the time, and I change them out and I use them. AA's, AAA's, C's, D batteries, you should have a ton of those. And if you have like flashlights like this that run on an 18650, this is the O light again. I mean, this is an 18650 rechargeable. Do you have a way to recharge that if you were to count on it? But it also can run on CR123 bats, primaries. Do you have a bunch of those stored up? By the way, those lithium batteries store forever. I do. I hope you do too. Do you have lighting stored up? Emergency lighting. You should have that. How about this? If this contagion-like thing breaks out, I guess you could say corona as well. Do you have these? Your masks ready to go? What if there's a shortage of these? In some places there already are. I've had these stored up forever, dude. So here's some other ones. These are some 3M Cool Flow masks. Charcoal impregnated. They have like a, I don't know, N95 rating on them. Bunch of these. I just bought them at a hardware store, and I mean they're zip tied together in storage, and I also have respirators with extra cartridges. Do I have gas masks? Yeah, I have those, but they're ancient. I got these primarily for a volcanic eruption, and also if there's body recovery going on, to be dead honest with you guys, because in without rule of law there's going to be a lot of that, and it's going to be unpleasant, and I guarantee you I'm going to be wearing this. You know how I learned to have masks? It wasn't from this corona COVID-19 stuff. It was from me watching earthquake recovery back in the 80s, like when Mexico City had that big one. Guess what everybody was wearing? All the recovery guys. Yeah, it's from the building dust, the dead body smells. It's just common sense. You should have enough of those in your inventory right now. Preparations for this. How about sanitation? Do you have a portable toilet? Do you have extra bags? Do you have a shovel where you could dig a GI-style trench? Do you have lime that you could put in there or some other chemical substance to treat it? Because you may not have any place to go. Sanitation's huge. You know, if sanitation gets jacked, a lot more people are going to get sick from that, and that is historically proven. Dysentery. Oof. Have a plan for that. I do. I'm not saying my plan is perfect, but I have multiple chemical toilets. I have multiple ways of going potty, storing it until the system gets back up online and I can dispose of it. How about clothing? Warm clothing. Sunscreen. I could go on and on. I think you get the picture. This is a wake-up call for your preparations overall. Contagion style. Not Cajun, contagion style of pandemic, which I do not think, at least in terms of physiological terms, this COVID-19 thing is. But it's a wake-up call. Now, what I don't want you to go out and do is just panic prep. Don't panic prep. Just every month set things aside. At this point, you should have your BOK pretty much done, your bug out kit. I posted that video about a year ago. You should have had time to completely flesh it out. That's another thing that could totally come into play with a true pandemic. You may have to skedaddle out of your property, and that BOK for every individual assigned to every individual in your house could be a very good thing. It could save your lives. And again, in the BOK video, I showed you these. And I even said, hey, I got these, Is it perfect? No, nothing's perfect. Are your preparations ever going to be complete? No, they're not. I would be happy if you just had the major stuff. If you had water, food, fuel, first aid, essentials, fuel, batteries. I said fuel twice because it's important. Sanitation, clothing. There you go. Notice I didn't really go to weapons. They're sexy. People like thinking about, without rule of law, I'm going to have my AR-15. I'm not worried about your guys' weapons situation. I know that it's good. I don't think you're going to need the weapons in this stuff, but it's an insurance policy. I do advocate that, and it is constitutional. It's a God-given natural right. All the stuff I've talked about. But I think you got that squared away. You got to get your other stuff squared away. For a true pandemic, which physiologically speaking, in my opinion, the corona is not. But as we wrap it up here, the perception of people is going to have a lot more impact on our economy than the actual virus will. And that could lead to some very bad things, as I've discussed. What do we do from here? You live your life. You go out and have fun. I just got back from a 3-day motorcycle camping trip on the freaking California coast. Orange it out. What do you mean orange it out? That's my term. Like I have like a little date book, and when I do something that's really exceptional, like a memory, I mark it in orange. Never heard that before, have you? Orange it out. So every day, try to make it an orange day where you go, yes, I did an adventure. I'm talking free days where you're not working. I really went out with my family, my friends, and I made memories. That's what I want you to do in life. I don't want you to be holed up in your house, scared, fearful with your preparations, praying for some pandemic or without rule of law situation to break out. I've always lambasted that mentality. I think it is ridiculous. I think you should participate in our society as an upstanding, law-abiding, participative member that contributes to society. All the while, corona cough. All the while having these preparations and a mindset to survive if things go bad. Can we do that? So press on, move on, but realize a lot of what you're hearing about corona is a bunch of freaking crap. It's propaganda designed to unseat President Trump and turn this country into socialism, says me, nothing fancy. And be on watch for that. As far as the disease goes, it's not much. 2% mortality rate? 2%? If you're healthy, you'll survive a corona incident, I believe. But it's a good wake-up call for you to get ready for something much more serious and much more severe, which I do think you will see in your lifetime. And you may look back on these corona days as a gift because it was a wake-up call. Video complete. Thanks for being part of TNP Patreon, the reason I work so hard in the project. I will post this on the B channel. I'm doing that more and more videos to follow. More adventures to follow. I'm really doing a lot more adventures. It's really fun. GRVs, WRVs, KRVs, and all their usual content. Maybe you should hole up and you can watch Nothing Fancy videos if the pandemic breaks out. That is, if you have internet. So I hope you do. Signing off from the bunker. Thanks for watching. See ya.